Hey, Bill,
Yeah.
welcome to the Mass Construction Show.
Thanks, Joe. Good to be here.
Yeah, welcome remotely, I guess, right? Uh,
Yes, we're social distancing.
yes, the original schedule was for you to be here. Obviously, a lot's transpired since then, and normally I'm a little more casual about things, but maybe we just kind of jump right into that situation. So, coronavirus, COVID-19, whatever we're calling it now. Um, and just for people that might not be local, because it's surprising to me, like there was some out of state folks, and now there's actually folks in other countries that listen, which is pretty nuts. It might only be
Yeah,
three
it's
people,
pretty
but
neat.
still, there are people that don't know what's happening here. So for people that are unaware, last week the city of Boston shut down work on all construction projects for the time being, for at least a couple weeks we're looking at, maybe more. And then was it yesterday or the day before? The day before, right? Cambridge fall.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, there have been rumors that Cambridge would shut down for a few days, and they formally communicated it. I believe it was Wednesday evening.
Yeah, there was like I kept having people send me these little like bootleg screenshots of like these bootleg memos that were coming from the city of
I
Cambridge.
I got the same ones, and it was maddening. You're trying to plan, and there was no formal communication, but it did finally arrive. Wednesday evening.
Yeah, and it's funny you see that, and I didn't share anything because I was like, I don't know if that's real.
I know. Yeah, that's right.
But I gotta in this case I have to give Cambridge some kudos. They were very clear with their memo that they put out, like what the guidelines were for how long. It was very specific. It wasn't very haphazard. And then Lieutenant Towski and Cambridge Fire followed up with like an email to people saying, "Hey, this is kind of the expectations when you close down the site and it's going to be vacant. What are some tips and tricks and what are some resources?" So um, Cambridge on their rollout was pretty good, I thought. And I also like, did you see that they gave it? Obviously, this doesn't help you, but they gave an exclusion for 1, 2, and 3 families.
I did. I saw that.
Yeah, it seemed like that was a good choice. I mean, somebody's renovating their kitchen and has no kitchen, and we're going to leave a family in limbo over that. Doesn't seem to make.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it's consistent with, trying to limit gatherings to 25 people or less. Um, yeah, for sure. I mean, with some of the larger construction projects, especially in Cambridge, there's so many of them. You're gathering hundreds of workers, all in the same place. And it just seemed counterintuitive when everybody else is really distancing, that we're gathering all these folks on a daily basis, then sending them back home. Yeah, I mean, if we're going to slow the virus spread down, or make sure that curve is not quite as steep as we anticipate. It might be. I don't know. I think it makes sense to have a pause, but yeah, for smaller jobs, certainly, I think it makes sense to let those go on.
yeah, I mean, because if you've got
Again, that doesn't help. That doesn't help my company,
yes,
or most commercial contractors. But
right, understandably, and I was just texting with someone who has a pretty large firm, and he had mentioned that he had to lay off 95% of his field and shop employees. How are you guys managing?
um, well, I mean, we're just doing that. We're managing. So the cities of Boston and Cambridge have kind of taken the bat out of our hands. So we've done the same thing. We've laid off all of our workers from our Boston projects, and we're in the process of doing the same for our Cambridge jobs. That for us is also about 95% of our work right now. So really, it's been a challenge just to make sure that we understand what the directive is, to kind of collect our thoughts on what the company priorities are, and then how to communicate, to everybody, what we know, what we don't know, how this whole thing is affecting the company, so that everybody knows, um, and what we're going to be doing going forward. So, to our field staff, we have a lot of backlog. So, in a lot of ways, I think that that maybe we're fortunate that this is hitting after such a good long run of prosperity in construction.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully most companies have been able to build some retained earnings and kind of prepare for a rainy day, which, certainly this is more extreme than any rainy day I could have imagined.
Mm-hmm.
But our message to our field folks is, look at, you were a Gaston employee yesterday, you're a Gaston employee today. And even though you may be collecting unemployment and sitting home tomorrow, you're a Gaston employee tomorrow. So we're going to bring them back. And that's what we need to communicate, is that, the intention is, this is not a voluntary layoff. This is not anything, through their own fault. And once these jobs get back up and running, we anticipate and we almost depend on them to come back right to their jobs and pick back up. So just so that they know that their jobs are here waiting for them once we're able to resume work,
Mm-hmm.
I think is important, because there's just a lot of stress, a lot of uncertainty, especially for a trade worker, who has, bills to pay. And, if you're a single income household and you're a union electrician, missing 2, 4, 6 weeks of pay is really that's a big impact.
Yeah.
So we're just trying to let them know that, as a company, we depend so much on both our field leadership and our installing mechanics, and we need them back once these jobs start. Like we cannot afford to lose them. All of us have a lot of backlog, and I haven't heard of any jobs being canceled. Now, we'll see if there's any kind of economic fallout, in the long term,
Mm-hmm.
as a result of all these construction slowdowns and just, the economic outlook is certainly changing. But assuming that all of our work goes forward, we need all of our workers back.
Yeah. And then you're just, how do you think you come about, like, from a communication standpoint? Like, hopefully it would be nice if Boston and Cambridge would communicate that, hey, we're going to start up work the following Monday, at least give you some ramp up time to put the call to the employees. Are you going to try and keep some constant communication with them if you can, or is that not really a possibility with the?
No, it is a possibility. And I think for us, it feels like a requirement. We certainly don't want anybody sitting home for 4 weeks feeling like we've forgotten about them, because that's certainly not the case. We have software that allows us to ping all of our field workers via text message, via email. So we're going to be sending out weekly updates at a minimum, just to let them know, what we know, what we anticipate. So, Boston shut down initially for 2 weeks. I think it's probably naive to think that, Boston will only be shut down for 2 weeks. Cambridge was more open-ended. But even just to communicate, that we don't have any updates, but, we're still here and still thinking about you, and just, to know, hey, we'll be back in touch next week. So we're going to be doing that. We're starting a cadence of communication, both for our office staff, which is also, a challenge.
Yeah.
And for all the field workers. And for the office, it's even in some ways more challenging, because you're working remote for the most part.
Yeah.
I don't know if all companies are, but I would say 2/3 of our workers are now working from home. We were fortunate that we took all of our on-premises servers about a year and a half and moved everything up into the cloud. So as long as we have an internet connection, we can all work from home effectively.
Mm-hmm.
But we haven't ever done that. Like we've always been a company whose culture is to show up early, work hard, leave late, like the old school construction mentality. And I think now we have an opportunity to use some of the tools that we've put in place and to show that they can be effective. I think it might help us in the long run, but there's certainly a lot of uncertainty. So, we're dealing with a lot of our variable costs by laying off workers. Obviously we couldn't carry the cost of all of our electricians if we don't have any work being put in place, and we can't bill against that work. But in terms of, fixed costs, that's a challenge for every company now, because, you have salaries, healthcare, rent, leases, software licenses, those bills are going to keep flowing.
Yeah.
So, we all have to sort of gauge, how much pain we can endure. And, if we can maintain, well, from our company's standpoint, if we can maintain all of our office folks and keep them busy and have them working on special projects, should their workload decrease because we're not on site, maybe we can do some things that we wouldn't have the time to do otherwise. That'll make us better in the long run.
Yeah.
But it's really going to be a week to week, analysis, and to see, if this thing goes on for 2.5 months, that's a lot. That's a long time.
Yeah. I mean, even me as an individual, like, I share your sentiment, which is like, okay, this is an opportunity to get better and get to all the things that I've been saying I need to get to, and that's great. So I can do that. But you're right. There becomes a point where, like, okay, I can do that for 2 weeks. I can do that for 4 weeks. Can I do it for 8 weeks? Can I do it for 12 weeks? Like, that's a different ballgame. So yeah. Now, to your point about working remotely, do you think there might be some good byproducts coming out of this, where you're like, all right, here's some stuff that we were forced to use that really works, and now, not that we're going to go completely 100% remote, but what about the efficiencies built in by, especially for the people that are traveling farther? Like, okay, that's an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon, and like, if you can be working, then do you think things will adjust coming out of it? Find things that work and say, hey, why don't we keep doing these?
I do, and to be honest, I hope that they do.
Mm-hmm.
We have a challenge. So our headquarters is in Norwood, Mass. So we're a little bit south of the city. If we want to recruit, new hires in the office that are up on the North Shore, like Newburyport, or, even up near the New Hampshire border, that's a long commute to get in and out of the office every day. You might have, a worker spending 2.5 hours in their car. Like, that's not really productive time.
Great.
It's also a challenge, I think, in the long run. That kind of commute really just grinds on a person. So, if we can make that a little bit easier, enabling some people to work remotely and have buy-in from all of our folks, that are the tools that we put in place can really be effective and that we can be productive, then yeah, I think that our people will be more accepting of it, and it's going to be easier for us to recruit. I would love to open up, geographically, in terms of, where we can pull our talent from. Because as a specialized trade contractor, it's hard to find good, experienced people, and to limit yourself to to a commute that's 45 minutes or less, which I think is a reasonable commute, is makes it very difficult for us to grow the company.
Yeah, I even think now times are changing because things are improving in Rhode Island, but there was a stretch there where we were booming and Rhode Island was still hurting, but if there's somebody that's an hour and a half without traffic in Rhode Island, and they can do the bulk of their work remotely, but yet it's not that far that, okay, if we need you to come in the office on Tuesdays and Thursdays or for a special meeting, it's not a heavy lift. I didn't even think about it that way. That circle just grows about who's the potential candidate, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and think about just the whole Worcester area. I mean, they're only, maybe an hour just west of the Mass Pike. That's not further than, say, Linfield or Burlington in traffic. If we can open up, the window and find some good people that way, that would be great. We have job site visits that are required. Most of our work is still in the local 103 area, primarily Boston and Cambridge. So, you're always, if you're a project manager, or if you have specific job duties, you'll have to be in town, but that's unavoidable. That, a lot of people do that, but there's so much that we can do at home. And again, really, it's been, for me, it's getting the buy-in from our existing folks who are used to just doing business in one way. And I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later um, with prefabrication, but changing how you go about doing your work when it comes to people is a challenge. It takes a long time, and it's more of a people have different philosophies. Um, if you give them the tools and then you prove to them, over time that these tools work, then you get some buy-in. But otherwise, people are unlikely to change and accept. So for us, working from home has always been a little bit taboo. Like, oh, if you're working from home, you must be, getting your workout in at 9:30 and then taking a long lunch and hanging out with the kids at 2. Um, you know, I know that that's not the case.
Right.
But you need to get that stigma, away, especially from some of your business leaders, to enable all your folks to work remotely. And I think this might be the thing that helps us get through that. So
Yeah.
if there's a positive, I think that might be one of them.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's it. I think you're right. I think it's going to come on a couple of fronts, which is like you need to have your hand forced to do things, right? And this forces everybody to try it,
Yep.
right? And if that makes the leaders more comfortable with it, fantastic. But on the flip side, there's probably going to be upward pressure coming from employees saying, hey, look, I got as much done or more than I typically do. And I didn't have to sit in my car and I did get to see my kid. And, um, you know, so I think it's going to potentially come from both directions. It might be more of a demand from an employee side of things and um, a more potential acceptance from a management side. I don't know what you think about that, but
No, I totally agree. I also think that, for all of our competitors, for all of our competitors that don't currently have the ability to work remotely, I think a lot of them are figuring out how to do that now.
yeah.
So, I'm afraid that if we don't embrace this, we're going to fall behind.
Yeah, that's a that's a good segue to prefabrication, which
Yes.
I might go to. But I think one other good thing to point out here is not necessarily that it's a good thing, but just something to point out that I think people might find um, interesting to understand if they're not familiar. So, you guys, being a union shop in the Boston area, are disproportionately hurt by the Boston and Cambridge shutdown, right? The bigger
Yeah, correct.
jobs are the ones that are happening in Boston and Cambridge. They are the ones that tend to be, it tends to be where the bulk of the union work is, right? So, what would you say? Is it 90%, 80% of your work is Boston, Cambridge?
It's probably close to 90%. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you look at, especially if you consider it from a dollar value standpoint, and not necessarily hours, like it probably firmly puts it in that camp. And just for reference, I mean, I would say I remember when I was looking at the numbers when I was at the AGC, I started collecting like permitting data, and I would say about north of 60% of all the work in Massachusetts happens in Boston and Cambridge, maybe even
Yep.
2/3.
Yep.
So people hear that, okay, well, there's two cities, one of them relatively small, that have shut down work, that, oh, well, you've got the whole other state working. Yeah, but the rest of the state is not even the size of, those two municipalities from a dollar value standpoint.
Yeah.
So for people that grasp that, the fact that 2/3 of Massachusetts is shut down from work, and the bulk of that work is union trade work.
Yep.
So you guys are disproportionately being hit hard in this situation.
Yeah. It's but I got to be honest. If this virus, if the numbers keep on ticking up and they're getting exponentially greater as we do more and more testing, I have a feeling that it's going to affect the entire state. I can't imagine a scenario where the Newtons, Quincy's, Worcesters, even the rest of the suburbs where they don't follow suit in some way, shape, or form. And really then just as a business, the community, I think there's going to be a lot of fallout. I mean, the good thing about having a lot of construction work is that we're all busy and you have a lot of opportunities. And the bad thing is that you have a lot of contractors who may be overextended, maybe into a line in order to support these larger work programs that they've been working on. If you have this extended shutdown, it could put a couple of contractors out, and I don't know if we can get around that. And I don't think it's just going to be union contractors. I think every construction firm is going to be in the same boat. Our customer set, their work is pretty diversified. They do a lot of union work. They do a lot of work in Boston and Cambridge, but they do work, in different states, out in the suburbs, Western Mass. And at some point, it's going to hit them. And honestly, I just don't think any of us are going to be, we're going to dodge this bullet. So yes, right now, the union contractors certainly, I think, have been hit harder than most, but I think it's going to hit us all equally as hard. And really the hope is just that, we get some kind of certainty on what the timeframes are going to be, so we can at least plan. Yeah. And then, you talk about ramping back up, that's going to be the next challenge, which is how do you re-engage on these jobs? And we all have added costs. So now you're demobilizing, you're remobilizing once the jobs open back up. Are the owners prepared to help pick up some of those costs? You have schedule impacts. You have tenants with leases that they may or may not be able to adjust. You have owners, institutions that are hoping to take beneficial use of a space, by a certain date, and it's going to be it's going to be a challenge now if we miss a good chunk of time to meet all those schedules.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about all the. It's funny, I've thought about so many of the repercussions of this, from whether there's an insurance angle on this, with everybody talking about the force majeure clause. All these things. You're thinking about this, and you're also thinking about supply chain. And okay, something's manufactured in the U.S., but if its component is manufactured outside in a place that we're not getting product from, you could still have a problem even if you're buying something in the United States. So I thought about all those, but I hadn't gone as far to say, like, okay, you have tenants that are looking to move in on set date. Their old lease is up at one time, and then they're out on the street. What's a knock-on effect there? That's a huge, huge problem.
It is. And then logistically, think about this. We all have, so I'll talk about our company specifically. We have switchgear orders and light fixture orders. They're all scheduled to ship, or there's quite a few that are scheduled to ship, or maybe are en route. And now there's no job site ready to accept them. We've had communication with our vendors. Most of their warehouses are now full already. So where do you store, something that's already shipped? Will the manufacturer take them back and hold them for you? Are they continuing to build? And if they continue to build, and you have all these big manufacturing companies, and they're continuing to build because they have a lot of backlog, but you can't ship out what's ready to go. Do they have enough space at the dock? What is even if we don't have component delays or issues that are going to affect lead times, that there is this kind of ripple effect that's going to, from an operational standpoint, hamper, I think, all the manufacturing firms. And it's not just maybe buying components from China or some other country that's been shut down or hard hit. It's just a matter of space, I think, at this point. So I do think we're going to have a delay that's going to be at least as long as our shutdowns. But the hard part is we don't have that information now, so we can't communicate to our customers, what those delays are going to be. And we're working now to get that information, but it's going to be hard to know until you get there.
Yeah, and picture you just painted was really kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? Which is uh, if you're continuing to produce product, then and you've got no place to put it, now that's a problem, right? But if you don't continue to produce, then in 2 weeks or 4 weeks, when everyone says go, now you don't have any product, right? So it's like
Correct.
that's really
Right.
a fucking shitty situation, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it could be better. I mean, it's certainly like, just I've never seen as much uncertainty, um, because this happened so fast. It hit us so fast. It seems like the environment's changing by the hour, like not by the week or by the month. It's literally, it's everybody's figuring this out on the fly, and that's been the biggest challenge. So, trying to wrap your head around what it is that you're actually facing for challenges as we move forward, has been hard. So, how do we communicate to the owners, through our customers, what our limitations are when you don't know them?
yeah, no, it's a great point. I mean, the the upside is we're in a business that is just are problem solving all day long. So I think the people in this industry are a little better equipped than most to deal with, uh, delays and supply chain and all that stuff that we deal with every day, just not on this level.
I agree with that.
You did mention like ramping up. What's your thoughts about trying to be ready to ramp up when you do get the green light?
Well, I think every job is going to be different. Honestly, I think we're going to have to, figure out, do you have your entire workforce that you had before available to come back when you need them? The base assumption that we're making is that yes, they'll be there, but we don't know. We don't know if we'll have people in quarantine or who will be taking more time out of for precautionary reasons, or maybe they're sick. So I'm not sure. And then it's not that easy to take 4 weeks off and just pick up where you left off. I mean, we have to, we've taken an inventory, of tools and materials and everything on site, and we know what we're building in our prefab shop and what we have scheduled to arrive in terms of materials to from our vendors. But it's going to be a reassessment at that time, to see, when can we get what we need? When can we put the manpower in place? And what work do we actually have to work on right away? I think it's going to be more of a slow ramp up than it is going to be just jumping back in with 2 feet. Yeah. I just can't imagine a scenario where we just, pick up as if nothing ever happened.
Yeah. Do you think that there needs to be some dialogue around getting paid, right? Because I'm just thinking from a cash flow standpoint, right? Like, I'm sure everybody's going to be eating into cash reserves to keep what staff they have on going, right?
Yeah, fact, yes.
And then everybody says go, and now you're going to have all these employees come on to flood job sites, and you got to make that payroll, and then now you're wrecking at the end of that month, and you get another third. Like, that's a huge cash flow issue. I think
it's a huge cash flow issue, and I think that's what I was kind of getting to when I was saying how, anybody who's overextended right now is probably more at risk. But I was really happy to have this conversation. I had a conversation with one of our bigger customers, and they're reaching out to all of their owners on their projects, and the message is look, we need to make sure that we're paying our recs that have already been submitted in the same cadence that we've been paying them prior. Because if we hold up the payments because of uncertainty and whatever, we're only gonna make this problem worse. You need to support the contractors that are there and make sure they have the ability to get back working. And it's going to be it's going to be a struggle. We're going to be eating into our cash reserves, and some people into their line, whatever else it is, you'll get deeper into your line between now and when we get back to work. And then you're right. Once you get back to work, you're making your monthly union payments and your weekly payroll for this big field staff, and it's going to eat a lot of cash flow. Usually, when things slow down in a down economy, that's when you start catching up on your cash flow because your receivables start coming in. It's really, really important, I think, to the ownership community that they understand that those receivables really still need to come in because so many contractors need to catch up now so that they're in a financial position to support the jobs and all the work once we start back up. And, it may not be my company, that has a struggle or can't meet their obligations once we start back up, but it only takes one company per job to derail that job. So
absolutely,
cash flow is going to be a big conversation. And like I said, I'm glad that my customers are thinking about it, but I know in the back of their heads, they're thinking that they have a lot more risks than they originally took on when they started these projects.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I mean, you need everybody at the table there, from ownership down to the subs, right? And supply.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And, it would be very unusual for an owner to maybe accelerate a payment program once these jobs get started back up. Our typical payment in construction is probably slower than any other industry, on average 45 to 60 days, if not beyond. But if it would certainly be helpful, and it would eliminate a lot of uncertainty and certainly keep a lot of good companies in business. If that could go down to, say, 15 days, or if we were allowed, as a subcontracting community to bill for costs and then project into the future, maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks, and try and get at least cash even. We do end up at least at the beginning of projects, we end up financing the jobs because of that delay between your rec date and when the payment comes in. If we can try and eliminate that gap, at least in the short term, I think the industry is going to be a lot better off.
Yeah, I mean, I think if people could communicate what you said, because that's a very good point, which is it only takes one subcontractor, right? So, but let's say it's you, right? But if the electrical is not getting done, walls aren't getting closed up, paint isn't going on the wall, but so if that can get communicated to the owner that said, listen, we need to keep all of our subs alive. We can't squeeze. There's no time to squeeze people. And if anything, we almost have to prop them up, because if not, you might be able to hang on to your cash a little longer, and that's not my side of the business, and maybe they're getting more interest in just holding their cash and feel like they're protecting themselves, but in the long run they're hurting themselves because they'll cripple the whole job, right?
Yes. So, I mean, and for whatever reason, our industry just has evolved where delays in payments or having the vendors float a lot of the upfront costs until requisitions are paid. That's always been an accepted way of doing business, and I think as a contracting community, we've allowed that over the years to happen. But I've just never seen a scenario where projects, like right in the middle of work, just drop right off the cliff. Just go home, everybody. It's in 2008, we had a huge dip in the stock market, and we had a lot of projects that were canceled. But those weren't jobs that were in progress. That was future work that might have been shovel ready. And an owner might decide, hey, my balance sheet doesn't look like it did 2 months ago. We're going to put this job on hold, and then everything just slowed down. But now this is just like an abrupt stop. I don't know as an industry if we've ever seen a scenario like this. So I think that as an industry, we need to just start really looking hard at what the impacts are on all these businesses, and we need to do whatever we need to do to make sure that everybody is whole. And we're not saying, I don't think it would be responsible to loan money to the contractors and
right.
Pay before work is in place, but we need to find a way to close that gap, because yeah, cash flow in our business is more important than I think almost any other. And it's just, yeah, if we can't find a way to keep contractors going right now, with quicker payments, and a really well communicated, the timing on payments, so everybody knows when their recs are going to be paid. We don't have that kind of communication right now in a lot of our jobs, and if we had it, I think it'd be a lot easier to manage this whole crisis going forward, especially coming out of it.
Okay, that's great. I'm going to do this, Bill. I'm actually going to, I said that I wasn't going to stop, but I'm going to stop just because I think Skype has a time thing on how long it'll let you video.
Yeah, sure.
Right. So I expected it to be 15 minutes. It's 36 minutes. So, right. But I don't want to shortchange the prefab side of things. So
okay,
I'm going to stop, save it, and then I'll call you right back. We'll stop prefab.
Cool. Give me 2 minutes.
Perfect. Will do.
Okay.
Thanks.